All right, the format of tonight's meeting is to have a guest speaker share their experience, strength and hope on how the Alcoholics Anonymous program of recovery is working in their lives for 15 to 20 minutes. Tonight we have asked Scott to share.
Thank you. Hi everybody, my name is Scott. I'm an alcoholic. I haven't had a drink today and that's a miracle. I'm really glad to be here. And welcome to everybody who's new or visiting. My sobriety date is the 12th of May 1993. That's 20 years and 2 months. And I'm still delighted to be coming back to meetings and working the program of AA to the best of my ability and working the steps and the traditions. And because it works. Bottom line is I'm an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. I crawled in here 3 months before my 30th birthday and I wanted to die. That's really what it came down to for me is there's a joke in Boston where I got sober that I didn't get here on the wings of victory. I didn't see the light, I felt the heat. That's kind of how it went for me. And I was in trouble in a lot of relationships in my life. I was starting to get in trouble at work because of my drinking and my absentee record, and I was really, really scared. I wouldn't have told you that at the time. I would have said that I was really, really angry. But I've learned that anger is a drug that I pick up when I'm feeling fear because it makes me feel powerful. So I felt was really, really frightened when I got here. My life wasn't going anywhere, and I thought, I'm in trouble. And I didn't know where else to go. So I had a friend that was clean and sober, and I called him in a blackout. I don't remember calling him, and said, I think I have a problem with alcohol. And he came and got me and took me to a meeting. Ta-da! And I didn't stay sober from my first meeting, although I know many people who have. I continued to experiment for a while. I didn't know that this was a fellowship of not drinking. I thought this wasn't I thought it was about not drinking as much. One of the things that my first sponsor said to me, I had a desire to stop drinking like a pig. That was kind of my third tradition. But I couldn't, when I walked in here, I didn't understand that it was possible to not have alcohol in my life or in my body. I didn't understand that that was an option. I didn't know you could do that. It was too big an ask. And I'll be forever grateful that my first meeting in Boston was a men's meeting on a Wednesday night. It was in the High Holy Catholic Cathedral in the city of Boston, which as an angry agnostic and recovering Catholic, I did not like very much. But there wasn't somebody at the door who gave me a tick box. They didn't quiz me. They didn't make me answer questions. They didn't say, Scott, are you powerless over alcohol and is your life unmanageable? I didn't get that coming in the door. I got welcome. If you think you have a problem with alcohol, you're in the right place. And I certainly thought I had a problem with alcohol. And it took me a while before I believed that I was powerless over alcohol. I knew that I was getting in trouble because of it. But it took a while for the message that it was the first drink that got me drunk. I didn't get that. I had to hear that over and over. And after I'd been coming for about 4 months, I went away on holiday, which I now realize was a carefully planned relapse, which I didn't know at the time. But I went to Florida by myself. I had about 4 days before friends came to join me, and I drank. Ta-da! And I was only going to one meeting a week. I didn't have the literature. I didn't have a sponsor. I wasn't doing anything that was suggested other than be willing to go to meetings. That's all I had. And I got drunk again. And I like to remember this, and my sponsees hear this all the time. But back then, there were no mobile phones, so I was in Florida, and I had to get a mess of change and go to a payphone on the street and pump change into a payphone to make a long-distance call to this guy in Boston. And I said, I'm drunk. And I was mystified. It says, like it says in the book, that we go into a bar and find ourselves pounding on the table saying, how did this happen? And I called this guy and I said, I'm drunk. I was mortified and mystified. He said, did you put alcohol in your body? And I kind of went, yes, I did. Yes, I put alcohol in my mouth. And he said, that's how you get drunk. And I consider myself a smart guy, but I was like, wow, get that. Who knew that was the equation? And I, even after that day, I went to an AA meeting drunk on that afternoon in Florida, and my last drink was really effortless and stupid. It was just on a friend's birthday, and I bought a 6-pack of Rolling Rock beer around to his house because I was going to show you that I wasn't powerless over alcohol. And I had half a beer, and I just looked at it and I was like, this is just too hard. It's just so very hard to try to drink and to try to control it and to try to stop and to try to buy it and to try to, it just was too hard. And I surrendered on that day, the 11th of May, 1993. And, by the grace of my God and Goddess, I haven't had a drink since then. So that's real. I consider that incredibly mysterious. I don't know if you do, but, just done. One day done. And I'm not even sure that I belonged here, but just being done one day. And I've had, I want to talk about the 12th step. I want to talk about having had a spiritual awakening, because I came here to stop pissing my pants and pissing the bed and projectile vomiting red wine into my closet. That's why I came here. And my lofty goals when I got here, I just wanted the pain to stop. Everything hurt. It just, the unbearable pain of being, I like to be dramatic about this, but, it was too hard for me to be on the planet. Everything was difficult. And my battle cry, at 29 years old was, I don't want to be here. That's how I just wanted to be dead, but I didn't know how. And I just, I was just so scared and so bewildered about what was going on in the world. And why does everyone else seem to know what's going on? And they go to work and they seem happy and they buy houses and they have families. Why don't I fit in on the planet? Why am I an alien? And what I've come to learn is that I have a disease, and that word disease is really powerful for me. I suffer from dis-ease. I'm restless, irritable, and discontented. That's my resting state kind of as an alcoholic. And I have to do work to get out of that. That's, and when I don't go to meetings for a while, or I'm not in contact with my sponsor or doing service work, I return to dis-ease. Even after 20 years and 2 months. And it comes within a week or two. I start getting scratchy. All of a sudden, I notice people who are driving badly. I start to judge and criticize, which I think is my birthright, by the way. But I return to that behavior, so the dis-ease hasn't gone away. So one of the great mysteries for me in recovery is that even though I'm not putting alcohol in my body, and I haven't for 20 years, I still have a very dis-eased brain. When we talk about the symptoms of the disease of alcohol, I suffer from a compulsion and an obsession. When I put alcohol in my body, I have a compulsion. I can't stop it. And even when I'm not drinking, I'm thinking about it, right? And if you read the doctor's opinion, one of the most horrifying parts of the whole big book is the doctor's opinion, which says we are bodily and mentally different than our fellows. So it's not about just not drinking. It's not, because I'm different than my fellows. I need a complete spiritual awakening if I'm going to live on the planet. I have to think about things completely differently than I do as a selfish, self-centered, dishonest, inconsiderate alcoholic. Those are my character traits as an alcoholic, and I have to work really hard to get out of that. And so, the 12th step is having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. Not a result, the result. So, why am I still here 20 years later? Because I feel much better when I'm here. Because I feel much better when I do the work. I feel much better when I carry the message. And when I don't want to do it, and I do it anyways, I get double this, a double, triple word score in Scrabble. When I do the things I don't want to do, I get even better. There's a word I just invented. And so for me, this idea of I have continued to work on my spiritual growth, right? And not because I got nothing else to do, but because I'm hungry to not be that selfish, self-centered, inconsiderate alcoholic. It hurts too much to be me, left to my own devices. So in the 11th step, it says, sought to improve our conscious contact with the God of our own understanding. So there are two really action verbs. I seek and I want to improve. I'm seeking to improve my conscious contact. And I'll tell you that you do not have to believe in a God to get sober in AA, because I didn't, and I did. But I've come to believe that there's some magic stuff going on here that I can't explain. And over time, you've worn me down, because I used to say spirit of the universe, the great unknown. I had all these great words because I wasn't going to say God. I was not having a bar of that word. But something magic has happened. I'm an alcoholic and I don't drink. Right? And I started to go, wow, that's pretty impressive. Why is it that an alcoholic like me, who's hopeless, all of a sudden doesn't have to drink? And I started to go, that's mysterious, that's mysterious, that's mysterious. And over time, it's become miraculous. And as I see other people getting well who are tragic alcoholics, I see them come out of the darkness and all of a sudden take up a vital place in society. I've come to see in other people the miracle of this shit, frankly. And so what this is about for me is continuing to try to practice this stuff. And a huge part, I believe absolutely today, and this really, my spiritual flowering was really at about 17 years sober. And a lot of people have heard the story, but I went to LA with my partner Jonah. He got a fabulous job in LA, and I quit a fabulous job that I had here, and we went to LA, and it was going to be amazing. And I said, okay, gods, I'm going on a wing and a prayer, let's see. And for an entire year in LA, I couldn't find work. And I was carrying the message, and I was doing service, and I was trying to be the best recovering alcoholic I could be. And I had this idea that if I do all that stuff, that I deserve cash and prizes. right? Like if I don't drink and I try to help another alcoholic, that I deserve the car and the job and the boyfriend and the house and that stuff. And it didn't happen that way. We went through all of our savings. We ran out of money essentially, and I had to come back to Melbourne because I knew I could get a job here. And that's not my expectation about what I thought was going to happen in this move to LA. And during that time, as the money was running out, and I had applied for 80 jobs in LA, none of which I got. And I was like, God, why have you abandoned me? You know, it was one of the darkest times in my recovery. I'm 17 years sober, I'm a good boy, God damn it, why are you fucking, you know, like that's the kind of, I was very spiritual at the time. And I called my sponsor, Mitch, who's in San Francisco, and he's kind of been my big sponsor for 16 years. And I said, I think my God and Goddess have abandoned me. And that was really my bottom at 17 years sober. And I said, what do I do? Because I'm out of ideas. I'm praying, I'm meditating. And he said, go to a meeting. And I was like, you're joking. Like, I'm in financial difficulty, I can't find a job, I'm 48 years old. Really? That's what you've got for me, is go to a meeting? He said, yeah, go to a meeting and put your hand out to a newcomer. And I was furious with him. But I did it. I went to a meeting, I sat there, I was like, I was mumbling all sorts of things as I went in there. This isn't going to work, I'm screwed this time. And I put up my hand and I spoke to another alcoholic and I felt better. I didn't feel great, but I felt a little bit better. And I went home and I called my sponsor, I said, okay, I went to a meeting, you son of a bitch. And I said, now what do I do? He said, go to another meeting. Because I wasn't working, it wasn't like I had anything else to do, right? And all of a sudden I was going to 2 meetings a day. And all of a sudden I started to connect with people in LA, and before I knew it, within 2 weeks I had 5 sponsees, and all of a sudden I was back to what you do. I was taking them through the book, I was hanging out with other alcoholics, and all of a sudden it stopped mattering as much. You know, I was still concerned deeply that we were running through our savings and I wasn't working, but I started to get some perspective. And because I had so much free time, I had nothing better to do, so I was like, I might as well start meditating. Why not? I got hours to fill. And that's where I started to have another spiritual awakening, is doing meditation while I was feeling really frightened. I started to do meditation, and all of a sudden I started feeling less afraid. So if you haven't done meditation, like, I don't get Qantas freaking flyer points for getting anyone to meditate, but for me it makes me feel better, it makes me feel less frightened and less alone. And just sitting quietly or breathing or focusing while I'm walking or doing dishes just quiets my head. That's one of the benefits of meditation for me. And my prayer, and up until maybe 2 years ago, my prayers were always, and it says not to do this, by the way, dear God, help me to get a good job and a good house, and thank you for my partner, and I did a couple of thank yous, but I didn't want the cash and prizes. That was my prayers were. And then it says somewhere in the book, if you're going to actually pray for yourself, stick at the end of it, if it be thy will. Right? And so I just stuck at the end of it, if it be thy will. And in the last couple of years, my prayers have changed radically from asking for things to thanking the universe for things. I don't know if this makes any sense, but please give me the car, give me the boy, give me the house, whatever it is all of a sudden I've started to realize how much is in my life. And so my prayers have become prayers not of supplication, asking for things, but thank you for my sobriety, thank you for my health, thank you for the fellowship of AA, thank you for my partner, thank you for my sponsor, thank you for my sponsees, thank you for my house, thank you. And I'm saying thank you. And that's what the bulk of my, and then I say, please make me a channel of God and Goddess of your saving grace, and let me help another alcoholic today. Boom. And that's the end. That's kind of what my prayers have become. I've stopped asking for stuff and I've started saying thank you. Now that's an addition. I've always done a gratitude list. And then I sit in quiet meditation. And I'm happy to talk about this separately, but I do this whole meditation about grounding myself and breathing in white light. And what I've been taught in AA that's really practical is all of my problems are about self-centered fear. Everything. And I find this deeply insulting because I want it to be much more complicated. When I am afraid that I'm going to lose what I have or not get what I want, or both, I behave badly. And it says in our book, we grab for more than our fair share of love, romance, money, work, and we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate, seemingly without provocation. And I'll be damned if that's not exactly what my entire life has been. I am in every page of the big book of AA. There's no situation I've ever had that hasn't been solved already hundreds of times by other alcoholics, and it's all about fear. And so my salvation in the 12th step is about love, is about being of love and service in the world. I feel fear, I want to stay in fear, I'm going to lose what I have, I'm not going to get what I want. That's what my head tells me. And one of my sponsees, maybe 2 or 3 months ago, it was maybe 6 months ago, said to me, we were talking about this, and he said, well, the brain isn't the only intelligent organ in the body. I just kind of looked at him for about 20 seconds. And he didn't even have to say anything more, right? He's talking about the heart. The heart is another intelligent organ. But so that idea of, I have a diseased brain, so stop listening to it. Why don't I start listening to the wisdom that's in my heart? Why don't I start, I was taught this thing and I forgot it. I was 5 years sober. My sponsor used to say, when I was in indecision, he'd say, what would love do? And I just always feel really threatened by that. I have no idea what love would do. The chances are, it's not what I have planned as a practicing alcoholic. You're taking my fair share. I was driving home tonight, an SUV pulled in front of me. That son of a bitch got in front of me. And I just kind of went, what's the fear? I was like, well, the fear is I'm not going to get to the meeting on time. He's getting in my way. He's taken my share of the road. I was like, oh, here I go again, And it's just so the spiritual response is to let him get in front of me and to wish him well. Good luck with that, getting in front of me, congratulations, So that's this idea of doing contrary action and trying to say what would love do has really changed my life. And that when I'm in indecision, that question, what would love do, I stop listening to that judging alcoholic head, and I listen to another source of wisdom. Because what would love do is hard to fool, really. Because what would love do is not cheat on my partner, which is what my head says routinely. It's not don't file your taxes. It's not screw your boss. It's, that's what my head says. And I've been taught that I'm not responsible for the first thought that I have in my head, that's my head is diseased. That organ is diseased. I'm very much responsible for the second thought or my response to that. And that's my life's work. It's become incredibly internally focused. I'm much less interested in what you're doing. And I don't mean that not in a loving and supportive way. I'm much less focused on what you are doing in your recovery. Because my life, there's so much work for me to do to just keep my side of the street clean. So that's, my spiritual program today is I meditate, I pray, and I take this into my day. Like AA is absolutely at a cellular level in my life today. It's not something I do when I'm at meetings. It's not something I do at the morning. It's just part of my life now. It's just everything. And all of my work today is to not be in fear and to just take my temperature, which is kind of a 10th step. Where am I? Where am I? Am I being fearful or am I being in love? And that's and I found a spiritual practice that works for me. It's called the Akashic meditation, which is kind of like Reiki. It's about energy movement. But it's from being trained in AA that I found a spiritual path. Like the training I got in AA, which is very pragmatic, has enabled me to find a place in a spiritual community, I suppose, that works for me. So the bottom line is magic has happened for me. Magic can happen for anybody. If it can happen for me, this can happen for anybody. But the bottom line is I can't walk away from this. I have to practice this every day and every moment. And when I do, I have a happy and joyous life. So, I'll just close on this. In 5 weeks, I'm getting married to my partner, Jonah. We're flying back to America, and we're having a small family ceremony, and it's about 30 people. But people I grew up with are coming. People from San Francisco are coming. People from LA are coming. My sponsor Mitch is flying from San Francisco. It's an incredibly joyous time in my life, and I've been playing it really cool, right? And what I've realized is people have been saying aren't you excited? I'm like, no. And what I've realized is that old punishing God that I had when I grew up has snuck back in. And it's that old, very Christian thing, fundamentalist thing, which is don't get too happy because God's going to say, ha-ha, and drop the other foot, right? The other shoe's going to drop and you're getting fucked. And I had to realize that. I've had to fire that punishing God routinely throughout my recovery. And that guy snuck back in. And so, only in the last couple of weeks, I'm the kind of guy who snatches defeat from the jaws of victory, right? You're getting married, you're getting married, you're getting married. Yeah, I'm not going to feel this. I'm not going to feel this. And the truth is I'm overjoyed and shit scared about this. I'm making a lifetime commitment to my partner whom I adore for an alcoholic that is deeply threatening on a number of different levels. It means that I need to grow up, I need to show up, I need to be considerate. It's me committing in public that I can't just walk away from this, But the truth is none of this stuff would have happened in my life if I wasn't clean and sober, right? So I've met the partner of my life because I'm clean and sober. I've got a great job because I'm sober. And none of it matters, right? The only thing that matters is that I don't take a drink today. That's all that matters. But all this other stuff has happened. But I need to remember that the cake, the big present, is sobriety. Jobs come and go, partners have come and go, health has come and gone, weight has certainly fluctuated. I'm turning 50 this year. Youth is, is exiting the building. The only thing that's constant is sobriety and a connection with my higher power, and I am forever grateful. So thanks I'll leave it there.
Thanks, man.